Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at something pretty interesting, this meeting point between really old traditions and, well, modern technology. We're focusing on how we remember people, how we honor them, specifically around funerals and memorial services. Yeah, we've got this article here that really digs into it, how digital tools, things we use every day, are starting to complement traditional services. So our mission here is to unpack what this source says, understand how digital stuff can actually, maybe surprisingly, add real value to these very personal moments and figure out, why this matters to you.
That's right. And, traditional services, they fulfill such a basic human need, don't they? It's that specific time and place for everyone, family, friends to come together. It's really vital for grieving together, sharing stories, supporting each other, and, of course, formally honoring the person and starting that goodbye process. That structure, it gives a lot of comfort when things are really tough.
Oh, absolutely. That gathering, that single event, it's incredibly important. But the article we looked at does raise a point, maybe a limitation. How would you really capture a whole life? Someone complex, their whole history, decades of stuff, relationships, jokes, the quiet moments, everything. How do you fit that into one service? It can feel, well, maybe too short or too structured sometimes to get the full picture across.
Exactly. And that's right where the article brings in digital tributes. And crucially, it stresses they're not meant as replacements.
Yeah.
Not at all. They're presented as like powerful additions, things that enhance the traditional service, adding layers you just can't get otherwise, verbally or physically. It's like widening the perspective on a life.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So it's not changing why people gather, but enriching how they remember together and maybe after too. So digging into the source material then, what exactly makes adding a digital tribute valuable? What does it bring to the table?
Well, the article points to a few key things. One really strong one is the personal touch it allows for. Eulogies, shared
Hmm.
stories, they're essential, but they are just words. A digital tribute lets you weave together photos, videos, maybe voice messages, music. It brings in the actual sights and sounds of that person's life, their laugh maybe, or places they loved, moments caught on camera.
Ah, yes, the visual storytelling aspect. The article really leans into that. Seeing something hits differently than just hearing about it, doesn't it? A photo can just zap you back to a specific time, bring back feelings, details that words sometimes can't quite reach. And putting images, video clips together, you can actually watch a life's journey unfold. You see them young, growing up, through different stages with their people, their places. It's a different way of telling the story, maybe more immediate, more live.
Totally. Visuals can trigger memories in a, well, almost intuitive way.
Yeah.
And another big, plus the article mentions something that feels really important today is inclusivity.
Right.
Our families, our friends, they're often spread out everywhere. Getting to a service can be impossible sometimes. Distance, health, cost, work. So the source notes that a digital tribute can be easily shared online, maybe shown during a live stream of the service itself. This means people who absolutely cannot be there in person can still take part, see the tribute, feel connected to what's happening. It bridges the miles when connection is so needed.
Yeah, that inclusivity point really hits home. Feeling part of it, even from far away, that must be a huge comfort. It just widens the circle. And then there's the idea of it being a lasting keepsake.
Yes, exactly. That's the long-term value. A traditional service, it's a moment. A powerful one, but a moment. Memories shared there, they're strong, but, they can fade a bit.
Hmm.
A digital tribute, though, it creates this permanent, accessible archive, something digitally tangible, I guess you could say. Families can go back to it, watch it on anniversaries, maybe share with younger generations who weren't there or weren't even born yet. It becomes this sort of living piece of family history, keeping memories fresh, shareable,
Hmm.
different from, say, a program in a drawer or even an old photo album.
That idea of a living archive, that's powerful. It's more than just remembering, it's actively like revisiting and sharing. Okay, so these digital tributes offer something richer, more personal, more inclusive, and more lasting. But the article doesn't just stick to the why. It gives a peek into the how, too. It uses a specific service, a life portrait as an example. And just to be clear, we're only reporting what the source describes here, not, endorsing anything specific.
Correct. It's just used as a practical illustration of how these can be put together. The article outlines steps that seem designed to make it, well, less overwhelming when you're already dealing with so much.
Okay, so what does that process actually look like based on the source?
Well, it apparently starts with what often feels like the biggest hurdle, gathering and organizing photos. The source mentions this service helps by suggesting categories, like sorting by time, by people, by places. Just picturing a lifetime of photos, maybe scattered in boxes or on old drives. Having those themes must make that first step feel way more doable.
Oh, definitely. Just thinking about tackling that while grieving, yeah, a framework would be essential.
Right. And once you have that material collected, maybe roughly sorted, the source says the service can then automatically create a custom tribute movie that tells their story.
Mm.
So that suggests some tech involved, taking those photos and videos and starting to put them into a kind of narrative flow.
Mm.
Based on those categories, time, people, places, the automation probably helps structure that first draft, maybe hitting key periods or relationships. It gives you a starting point for the visual story.
Huh, that's interesting. So automation handles some of the initial heavy lifting, but it needs more than just arranged photos to feel truly personal, right? What about adding that specific feeling?
Exactly, and that's the next bit the article talks about,
Mm.
the ability to add personal touches like music, voice recordings, and thoughtful captions. This is where families can really inject the personality of their loved one, picking music they loved, maybe including short voice messages from people sharing a quick memory, adding captions to explain a photo or share an inside joke. It elevates it from just slideshow to something much more layered and deeply personal.
So organize the stuff, tech helps build a structure, then the family adds those really important, intimate touches.
Okay, once it's made, how does it actually fit in with the traditional service?
The source says they provide a format that's ready to play at a funeral service, celebration of life, or memorial event. So the final piece is delivered in a way that's easy to show, probably on screens or projectors at the venue, whether it's right in the main service or maybe at a reception afterwards or even a later memorial. It's set up for easy playback.
Got it. Ready for the people who are physically there. And what about connecting back to that inclusivity point? How is it shared wider?
Yeah, their article mentions that alongside that playback format, an online tribute page is ready to be viewed by loved ones anywhere in seconds. So it's not just for the people in the room, it creates this dedicated online spot that lets those who couldn't make the trip still see the full tribute, share in that remembrance either at the same time or, whenever they can. Wow. Okay, just hearing those steps laid out like that, from sorting photos to having it ready online and in person,
Hmm.
it really underscores how this seems geared towards easing the load during a really tough time. It makes creating something so meaningful seem, well, possible.
Yeah, it definitely seems focused on enabling something deeply personal while navigating all the practical challenges of grief.
Hmm.
And this whole process, the outcome, it really connects back to the core message in the article's final thoughts section.
Which was that main takeaway, yeah.
Precisely. That a digital tribute doesn't replace the traditional service. It's a complement, a powerful one. It enhances it. It helps families tell a fuller story, a more vivid one about their loved one. And it creates a broader shared experience of remembering that lasts longer and reaches further than just the physical event. It's about adding depth.
That's a really useful distinction. It's not an either situation, it's more like an and. Using tech to make the traditional act of remembering even more meaningful, more complete. Okay, so we've walked through what the source says about digital tributes, why they add value, that personal touch, the visual story, inclusivity, the keepsake aspect, and how a service like the one mentioned might facilitate it. Now, let's bring this back home. For you listening, what does understanding all this really mean for you?
Well, for starters, it's realizing that even deeply rooted traditions are evolving, with technology. It might open your eyes to different ways you could honor someone, ways that feel maybe more complete, that really capture who they were, perhaps better than a single service alone allows. And hopefully, you've got a pretty good handle on this whole intersection now, the benefits, the process, without having to wade through tons of information yourself.
And I think maybe the real aha moment here, based on how the source frames it, is seeing the problem clearly, that limitation of a single service trying to contain a whole life, and then seeing how digital tools offer a really specific, quite powerful solution by adding those layers. Personal story, visual elements, reaching more people, lasting longer. It clarifies the why behind using this tech. It's not just tech for its own sake. It's technology serving a very basic human need to mourn, remember, and, yeah, celebrate a life.
Exactly right. It shows how tech can actually amplify our ability to connect and remember, even during our toughest times.
This has been a really insightful deep dive, I think, into how modern tools can genuinely enrich these very old practices of remembrance.
It's definitely a space that's changing.
Yeah.
And it does leave you wondering, doesn't it? As technology keeps evolving, how else might it shape how we remember people in the future? What parts of digital connection, what kinds of digital representation will become really essential for families trying to truly honor someone they've lost? Food for thought.
Definitely something to mull over as things keep changing. Now, if you are interested in learning more about the specific example service mentioned in the source article, just as an illustration of how these tributes work, the details are at alifeportrait.com. And that wraps up this deep dive. Thanks for tuning in.